Hey ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a tier list for Apex Legends Season 8, ranking and explaining every weapon in this new season. And if you're a beginner, this is probably the best video you could watch. Now, my tier list is not going to be something like this ranks 25th or this ranks 17th. That really doesn't matter, does it? I'm going to talk to you about why these weapons are good, why the situation they would succeed in, and whether you'll see the best players using these weapons, and whether you'll see these weapons falling into obscurity. Talking about the slew of new hop-ups, the best hop-ups for each weapon, and of course, what practical use this has in your games. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. Let's get right to it. The RE45 is a weapon that got buffed last season, and I'm really impressed with it still. It's a weapon you want to use if you could find something early game. Maybe it's better than a Mozambique or a P2020, which you're going to see in just a moment. And with an extended mag, it actually melts pretty quickly. This is a great weapon if you want to surprise opponents, because they won't be expecting this shot pattern. It's not really considered the top 3 light ammo weapon, but it still does the job. So I really do appreciate the RE45, and I'd say it's a middle of the pack weapon you won't see in in-game, but early game will melt. The P2020 is a potential in-game weapon, and it's also the earliest of early game weapons ever. It's essentially your pistol, but not your deagle. It's your little, like, baby pistol. It's the one you give to your little cousin to say, okay, go play with this while the real boys play with something else, or the real girls, whoever it is. At the end of the day, the P2020 by itself is pretty abysmal, but with the hop-up, the hammer point rounds, it means you could see the extreme damage when you break somebody's shield, and that's why it could be used as a high-level sidearm and late game, but it's just not common. So don't expect this to see in your final in-game circles, but you will see it early game quite often. Might be worth getting used to. The R301 has kind of taken the cake here, especially with the gold magazines and the way that they've been operating around this meta, which we'll talk about a little bit later into the video, and of course towards the very end we'll mention the impact that those are having, which I believe is going to be great. The R301 I think is the most casual and casual friendly light ammo weapon. It's the easiest to hit from long to medium ranges. It works well with a 2 to 3 times scope, which unlike the R99, which probably beats it right here in terms of raw DPS and up close prowess, it can contend from a lot safer distances. So if you're a player that likes to be a little bit slower in your approach, the R301 might be for you. You can see it melts, and one of the bigger things about the R301 is the headshot bonus damage, which allows it to really scale up and damage a lot faster. You'll notice weapons in Apex Legends have either 1.5, 0.5, or sometimes full 100% headshot damage bonus, which means it'll double the damage. The R301 is one of those. The R99 is not, but when you talk about a single magazine, it is probably the fastest and most effective way to take someone down. It just comes with a lot of risk. You hit your entire magazine, you're good. You miss it, you're not. Talking about magazine, this weapon last season actually got a great buff to increase the amount of ammo in its magazine, and now it's gotten another buff again, the alternator. It has turned into a weapon that I think is one of the premier weapons in Apex Legends, right outside the R301 and R99, and allows you to have an extra bit of damage from 15 to now 16 per bullet, whereas other weapons we'll talk about actually got a nerf. It stepped up completely in the tier list, and I think it's something that people are not paying attention to yet that they should. Alternator is a super respectable weapon in this season, and I hope you guys give it a chance. The G7 Scout that you just saw there as well is really one of those weapons that has scaled at high level for its entire history of play. It shoots quickly, it has a double headshot bonus, so you're seeing those big 60s. The numbers don't lie, and this is a weapon that if you're running something like a Pathfinder and you like to get up in those interesting areas, but you don't necessarily want to be stuck with a sniper because you might have some up-close fighting, the G7 Scout is where you want to be, especially in the light ammo category. It's a great weapon, it's a high-tier weapon. You will see this in final circles and in pro play all of the time, and that really sums up where you can find the light ammos in their conversation of relative to one another. R99, R301, and G7 take the cake, but Alternator made a big move this season, and do not discount it. Talking about big moves, I don't know if there's a weapon that made a bigger move than the Spitfire. The Spitfire this season got a huge buff, and that buff goes from 18 to 19 per bullet. Now, you may not think that's a lot, but when this weapon has the biggest extended mag bonus for extra ammo out of any weapon in the game, it starts to become a big deal. In fact, it essentially added 55 more damage to the entirety of the magazine because, yes, as it scales, you get 55 bullets. Now, shooting over 55 bullets is the counterpart to one of the best weapons, also in the heavy category this season, the 30-30 repeater, the new weapon in Season 8. I know a lot of you are excited about this one, and you should be. I actually was a little bit trepidatious about whether this would be successful, considering it's competing with the longbow in terms of fire rate, it's competing with the flatline in terms of impact on a heavy weapon and versatility, being able to go with the anvil receivers back. But I do think that it has its place, and one of the reasons is that it's a little bit of a harder hitting G7 Scout, and it also, even though you're losing a lot of movement speed, whereas a wingman could still do the job from that range, the headshot bonus, the consistency, it kind of all starts to fit together, and it really brings some type of a different approach to playing with heavy ammo weapons. It's not simply the wingman as your secondary or even your primary. This is definitely a secondary weapon, and you're going to need to use it that way. When you see the gold magazines, one of the great combos I think is with the 30-30 repeater, as when you're using a Spitfire and you're shooting a lot out of your 30-30 repeater, you can switch to your Spitfire for 5 seconds, and then your 30-30 repeater will be reloaded. That's the passive these gold magazines have. 5 seconds of not using them, and they will reload themselves, which scales really well, allowing you to have almost zero downtime when playing against opponents. Notice the wingman just got reloaded again. Where does that stand? Where does it put it? 30-30 repeater, Spitfire, those are two of the best weapons this season, and the wingman stays in that conversation. One of the reasons why is you'll notice the difference when I'm firing ADS here and when I'm firing ADS with the wingman. Sure, a lot of potential, but the wingman with the skull piercer even hits harder than that. And look how much faster I'm moving, meaning that I am a harder target to hit. And a lot of people don't understand that's the value in Apex. It's not just how much damage you could do. Most of the reason you die is because people are doing damage to you. So do 50 damage to them, they do 150 to you, doesn't matter. I'd rather do 25 to them and 0 to me and keep that scale up throughout the fight, because that means eventually I'll win. If you can't get hit, boom, you have a lot more of an advantage. And that's why the wingman still reigns supreme as a top tier weapon. You will see that, the 30-30 repeater, the Spitfire, and of course the Hemlock in those final circles. These are top tier weapons. Even though they've tried to adjust the Hemlock, it's not changed at all. This still has some of the biggest and best bursts in the game, as you can see there. A few rounds right to the head and you are going to be night-night, and there's going to be no hope for you in getting up easier. It's one of those weapons that I think people have to spend a little bit of time using, but over the course of the last few seasons, it's really become the dominant weapon in high-level play, and last season in Season 7, it was the premier go-to weapon for the back half of the season. Now, the Flatline has really lost a lot of its buzz, and it doesn't still rank higher than any of the weapons I mentioned, but I think the Flatline, always a contender with the R301, is now coming back into form. And for people who miss the anvil receiver, it's here, baby. The anvil receiver means that you can turn the Flatline, like the All-301, who also takes the anvil receiver, into a single fire weapon. And that has potential. How much potential? We'll have to unlock it throughout the season, but my bet is that this stock will go up. GME to the moon. I think Flatline potentially has that potential, but a little bit later, because the 30-30 repeater will take its shine as far as a distance poke weapon. However, when you do see the potential damage, you switch it to the single fire, and you see how fast I've melted these players, you can tell that this is just as fast or faster effective DPS than the 30-30. The numbers don't lie. This is a deadly weapon, and it is very versatile, and unlike the 30-30 repeater, you could switch back into your full auto mode and shred people who get up close with a good hit fire and one of the highest headshot bonuses in terms of the heavy ammo weapons and assault rifles that this game sees. And that's a double headshot bonus for the Flatline. Makes it so effective in those hip fires that one extra bullet goes from 20 damage to 40 damage, and boom, you've essentially guaranteed winning that fight. Great, so that should give you a good element of what you should expect in those in-game circles for heavy. Let's recap. Quickly, you're going to see 30-30 repeater, wingman. You're going to see the Flatline make a little rise, but not quite. It is the season right now of the 30-30, the wingman, and the Spitfire. And unfortunately, guys, if you don't think so, just play some more games this season. You will find out. Hemlock, obviously, a very strong choice. So let's talk about snipers. Snipers like the Sentinel have had a lot of impact, especially with some of the changes that they made last season. The the Sentinel has, I think, value, but I'm not sure that it takes the cake in all situations, especially when you look at its comparative charge rifle, which seems to be the best sniper for building up Evo shields in the entire game. The Hemlock is great burst damage, but using 2 shield cells has always been a cost not many players have been able to pay in terms of amping that damage, getting those bigger headshots, and obviously threatening the field. But if you can be accurate with this, it is probably the best bang for buck sniper that you're going to find. But again, when it comes to building focus on what sniper is in the mix, you have to say the longbow might be making a slight comeback. It has, of course, the Battle Pass level 100 skin. With the Skull Piercer, it's that much more effective. It's got a pretty fast fire rate, and again, the 30-30 repeater stealing a bit of its thunder with 55s and 57s and 47s, really right in that range. And why would you have this instead of a 30-30 repeater? I'm not quite sure. Maybe because you want the level 100 skin? That's the problem that longbows are facing. It's just competing with too many other weapons that do the trick. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that's going to put it up into the higher level of snipers. So the longbow is still ranking a little bit lower. The triple take, whew, was the worst weapon, now one of the best, and I think has stayed in that high tier level. This is something you'll see at endgame almost the entire season unless it's changed. The ability to use it up close, the ability to hit big headshots, the ability to have the precision choke out of the meta and now just equipped onto the triple take to make the ability to condense the spread and hit those accurate headshots from range really makes this an all-around sniper. The only thing better in my opinion is the charge rifle, and that's specifically because it's hit scan and you can build up your evo shields more reliably than any other weapon. Sentinel's great too, but charge rifle and triple take are in the top. The L-Star, man, when is this thing going to pop off? I'm not quite sure. It's had potential for a long time, but I'm not sure anyone feels it's worth investing into it. It's kind of like you've got a star-studded lineup right there, and then there's a kid who has potential, but it's not going to be fulfilled for 10 years. Do you put him in the starting 5 just to get those 10 years going, or do you just say, wait, I want to win now? I think that's what the L-Star has been. Unfortunately, a kid with promise and potential, but I don't know how many people are willing to invest in it, especially when there's so many other good options. The L-Star, unfortunately, won't be in the meta this season, but I have seen it be used situationally. It's not a bad weapon at all. And hey, if you're making content and you use the L-Star and get some fun stuff going, at least you'll know it'll be unique to see on YouTube. So that should give you something to look at. Turbochargers, man oh man, there's nothing better, and with gold mags that have high magazine numbers and they also have deadly ammo and long reloads. This to me is where I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these energy gold magazines have an impact. The Spitfire, sure, but when you look at the Havoc and you look at the Devotion in just a moment, with a turbocharger, these things are going to be deadly. Imagine going from a Devotion, which has nearly 45, 50 bullets in the magazine, and then all of a sudden, 48 bullets in the magazine, all of a sudden, you switch off, shoot a 30-30 repeater for 3-4 times, poke somebody, they run up to you, and your Devotion's charged back up again? Ouch! This is a weapon that will decimate opponents, and I do believe that considering the Volt has taken a notch down with the nerf that happened, taking its bullets from now 16 to 15, it's going to be a much more, I'd say, for the middle of the pack player, obvious choice. The Volt is still the high-level energy weapon, and here's the reason why. Even though you're taking essentially from a low magazine count weapon with the Volt, basically a bullet down, so maybe reducing its magazine capacity for damage by 20, it still is super fast, and it really rivals the R99. What it means, though, is because you have less damage on each bullet, you'll have less wiggle room. So high-level players will still show you how good this weapon is. It just won't be maybe for your average aiming players, and that means it's going to be more risk, but still the same reward. The Volt, of course, is a great weapon and still my premier energy weapon, but expect to see more play with the Havoc turbocharger and Devotion with gold magazines, showing off what they truly can do, especially since Rampart making a little bit of a run in this meta. The EVA 8 is one of the best shotguns, and really it's about choice with shotguns. Get a purple bolt and get as much as you want out of it. It's a very fast firing weapon, so if you like to shoot a lot, if you like to move while you're shooting, if you have to like more flexibility and maybe hit more consistently than just one huge shot, EVA 8 is for you. And I do like it in skirmishes and firefights, and up close, people really get pressured by it. 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shots, 4 shots, they start to take that damage, start changing their game plan, and that's why I feel like it always will be tied essentially for first with the shotguns, because preference will make it what it is. The Mozambique with hammer points, it's pretty much the same exact thing from a shotgun perspective as the P2020 with hammer points. It's something that in in-game circles you probably won't see. It's possible for somebody to use it as a sidearm. I think I've seen it once in competitive tournaments that I cast for Apex Legends officially, but at the end of the day, it's much more of a parlor trick. It's not quite what you'll see players using because there's no benefit to running that when you could run a Mastiff. The Mastiff is by far, statistically, from being played in high level, and I think the impact it has, the best shotgun. Again, the EVA 8 might be your favorite. You might have more comfort with it, but the Mastiff is the best. One hit downs, one hit KOs potentially. It is just the most efficient weapon from a shotgun perspective, and people will carry this still on their sidearm. The Kraber is the best weapon in the game. We always talk about how the Kraber is the best weapon in the game, and it doesn't change because it's the only weapon in the game that is a one-shot headshot kill. No one can stop it. You are in charge of your own fate with a Kraber in your hands. That's why I love it. The PK, to me, honestly, is in a weird spot. People thought it might come out of the care package, and I'm actually curious if it will eventually, because I do believe the Mastiff, which used to be a care package weapon, is still better than the PK. I don't know why it feels that way, but to me it feels like even though you have the precision choke, even though you have that impact, a lot of players, because of familiarity, would still rather use a Mastiff. You guys let me know in the comment section below how you feel about that. It's a little bit of a hot take, but I do think the Mastiff is better than it. The Prowler, obviously one of the best weapons in the game. The 5-shot burst, including the ability to go full auto, makes it deadlier than almost anything. And of course, unless everyone hits their every shot and headshots on the Volt or the R99, the Prowler automatically automatic will win every gunfight that you're in. So if you want to do it, especially the burst too, it will win. So the Prowler, definitely a good choice to do. And I gotta say, this is a great season. Not the craziest meta shakeups, but the gold magazines, the introduction back to the anvil, make it fun. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about the meta. If you like the list, leave a like. And remember, never give up, never stop gaming. And I'll see you all next time.